Welcome to the Zesty Podcast. We are Megan and Dr. Alex. We are here for transformation. Yours, ours, and the collective. Personal and professional for practitioners. But not just any transformation. Compassionate transformation. Because between the two of us, we have seemed to have done things the painful way. Let our pitfalls become your stepping stones. We aren't afraid to share our raw and vulnerable truths in order to help you transform your thinking, your body, your heart, and your soul. Combining 15 years of functional medicine with brain-based habit change to lead you to the best life possible in a compassionate way. Compassion, yes, yet plan to roll up your sleeves. Transformation requires your participation. And a quick reminder, this information is not meant to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor, not this doctor, before making changes. Now let's get into the episode.
All right. Welcome everyone to another episode of RecoverU. I'm so excited for this episode. This is a very special moment for me because I get to interview one of my personal friends and coaches and mentors, Megan Blacksmith. So welcome, Megan. I'm super excited to have you today and to introduce you to every one of our listeners.
Well, thank you for having me, Kylene. I am excited for this conversation.
Me too. So let me just give you a quick intro. Megan Blacksmith is a holistic health coach, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, speaker, NLP trainer, and mindset ninja. And let me tell you, she really is. She's the co-founder of Zesty Ginger and the Zesty Ginger Podcast. She trains coaches, practitioners, and leaders with the tools for faster inner transformation without fighting themselves along the way through functional NLP, a combination of the principles of NLP, functional medicine, and compassionate coaching. And I am one of your proteges.
Yes, you are.
You are a huge reason as to why I am here, able to do what I'm doing, able to work with women recovering from betrayal trauma. And I really want to emphasize this, played a huge factor and a huge role in my own healing as I hit that wall and then came to the training and learned how to process emotions and do all the fun things that we do now. And so I'm so thankful for you.
Well, it's really fun to work with people like you, Kylene, because you take the tools and just run and implement really fast. So once they're added into what you were already doing, I just feel like it was such a great mix to bring together and really helping people. So yeah, as we'll get into, I have some similar backstories to you. So you and I both needed those tools.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I remember being like, I don't know, it was like 2 days into the training and the level 1 certification. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is what I need. This is how I can help people. This is amazing. It was so cool. And yeah, so we have some similarities for sure. So you actually are also, I don't know, I think I might have told you this. You're actually also one of the reasons I became a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. So I've just been following in your steps for like a decade now.
I remember that. It's been so fun.
Yeah. So Megan and Alex worked with me on my physical health and my hormones years and years ago. And then when they started moving into NLP work and transformation work and mindset and emotional processing, I jumped on that train too. And here we are. And then come to find out, and I didn't know this until years after, Megan has also gone through her own betrayal and recovery story. And I will encourage you to go check out the Zesty Ginger podcast. Megan has, do you know what season that is?
Yeah, let me look for sure. I think it's 16, but it's not, it's 15.
They've been doing this for a while. They have a ton of amazing information over there. And Megan shared a 12-part or a 12 episode version of her story. And in the very beginning, she was sharing her betrayal story. And then she continued to walk through how all of the tools that we have learned with NLP and the emotional processing have impacted her life. And she was just very brave and vulnerable in sharing her personal story over there. So definitely go check that out. But you're also going to get behind the curtain scene today of her sharing a little bit of her story with you right now. So Megan, so if you can just maybe give whatever version you want to give of the experience that you had in your marriage and where you were and a little bit about where you are now.
Absolutely. So I found that I came into this work starting with the physical body, right? So I feel like everybody enters at a different point. But for me, it was the physical body crashing after I had a baby. And that really led to me understanding that there was this whole world out there of functional medicine and things I didn't even know existed because my conventional lab work said I was all good to go. And so, like, that set the stage for me to start to have awareness that I was told something was fine with my body and then it wasn't, right? And so I think that started to open up the idea like, okay, this is not we just listen to what people say anymore. This is like, I need to start to actually tap in and understand my body and where I was. And I share that part about my health because that really led into my relationship. It was something that I was just avoiding looking at. So I avoided it. I avoided it. I avoided it. And I had all this health stuff going on. And I just pretended like that was separate. Like that's just my body. And then this is, yeah, okay. So yeah, we hadn't slept in the same bed for a year, but like we had a baby. And so there were all these stories around how things were just the way they were. And it really didn't mean anything. And everything was separate. Like it was a separate problem. And so I was under that delusion for a while and I attempted to keep it that way. And luckily,
but to be fair, there were legitimate physical things happening.
Yes.
And so obviously your attention would go to that, right? Because that's what you knew at the time.
Exactly.
Like I can name this. My knee hurts, right?
Right. So, the brain likes to kind of trick us like that, but it will keep giving us signs, right? So if we don't pay attention to what's going on at a bigger scale in our life, like if we're in a job that's really not aligned with us or in a partnership that's really not aligned with us, right? Or there's just like something we do every day that's just soul sucking, then it will start to manifest in the body. And that's kind of what was happening for me as I was starting to have the physical symptoms and I couldn't ignore them. And because I was tired and because my physical body was going down, it made me less able to like push away all the other thoughts that I was having about my relationship. So like my body was like, okay, we're not hiding this for you anymore. And I just started to question and I started to really say, you know what, I think there are problems here that I am ignoring and avoiding. And in the process of a very unfortunate way of finding out that my husband was having an affair through an Instagram DM message. And in the process, though, I, in my anger, was really lashing out at him, which to be expected, I'm sure. And I was yelling at him and I was just like, and you're an alcoholic. That's what I went to. I was just like, what's the most hurtful thing I could say? Is you're an alcoholic. And in the moment he looked at me and just, this whole face changed and he's like, you don't even know. And I was just saying it to be hurtful. I mean, clearly I had an inkling, like there had been a lot of alcohol creeping up and there had been a lot of bottles, but what I didn't know, and he said, that bottle that's in the garage, that's like that's in the kitchen, that's the decoy bottle. That's the one that slowly goes down. Like the empties are in the garage and in the recycling and all that. So I realized really quickly that my life wasn't quite what I thought it was, and that this had been a long-term problem and situation. And within 24 hours, we actually had him on a plane to rehab. So because it's an interesting setup, which I know for people who've gone through betrayal, in a way, I feel kind of lucky. It's a weird thing to say, but lucky that there was this combination because he went away for 30 days. I had this space to really look at myself and my life and my thoughts and my beliefs and my fears and start to learn about recovery, learn about codependency, learn about addiction in a way that I could just be focusing on myself. And having been in the health field for a while and having had a health crash earlier when my daughter was born, I was like, I am determined. I will not let this take down my health. Like I am not going to have this thing then, because I know the power of, the stress and all that. So I went into it with this almost extreme self-care, meaning was like, I will first go get the massage and then I will do some crying. And, I was like really aware of like all the things, right? Supportive. I did also watch the Game of Thrones for like weeks straight, which
As you
looking back
should,
was,
yeah.
very
A little
interesting
bit of numbing
choice.
out is okay.
Yeah. Super, super numbing out. And that was the coping mechanism at the time. And then that led me to become a little bit more back to neutral. And then each tool led to each tool. But through that process, I got to see a new layer of what was underneath things for me, like a new layer of beliefs. And the fact that a lot of my health conditions and things that were still hanging around even while doing all the functional medicine, right? So like done the mold detox, I had done the viral protocols, and I still had these symptoms that would pop up like every 6 to 8 weeks. My skin would hurt. It would just be this extreme fatigue. And that was starting to really bother me because here I am in functional medicine and health practitioner and I can't quite figure it out. And so it wasn't until I actually started to deal with forgiveness and resentment and the triggers around the affair, and then like me, like how much do I actually love myself, and like really looking deeply at all of this, that then the physical stuff started to go away. And then, I mean, that whole thing just really confirmed in cement the power of like what we believe and the things that are going on in our life, and then how much that impacts the physical body. Even though I didn't consciously know it was happening, I knew something wasn't right.
Yeah.
And I was choosing to ignore it. I was choosing to just like, I want that to go away. I'm just going to ignore that. So it was not enjoyable. And at the same time, it really did. It's an understatement, right? I know it's annoying when people say this, like, oh, it's the best thing that happened to me. I wouldn't go that far. It was a real awakening. It did help me shift who I am to a completely different level. So I am grateful that I went through that, in the sense that luckily I use that to then find tools, and I use that to then go deeper into me. And like, I'm not saying I caused this, and I also do know I'm a part of this. So started to look at that in a way that I never had before, and started to make decisions that were harder to make before, but that were based in people pleasing. I was like, okay, there's actually needs to be some boundaries now, right? So got to learn that whole world. But yeah.
And was Nate, sorry, we can edit that out if you don't want his name in here.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Okay. Was he fairly, it sounds like he was very on board from the beginning. I mean, he jumped on the plane and went to rehab and wanted to recover. But I know we all have our ups and downs through the process, but it sounds like he was generally supportive of, staying in sobriety and moving forward with you.
Yes. So I caught him at an absolute rock bottom, because I had made comments before like, hey, I don't think that's a normal amount to drink. And it would always be like, this is nothing compared, he's Native American, and he'd be like, this is absolutely nothing. This is just like a little before dinner treat or after dinner treat compared to like what he is seeing around him or what other people in his life were drinking. So I remember I was feeling like, it's not quite right. And anytime I would suggest that may be a problem, it was definitely just, swept under the rug. And I started to feel a little bit like, well, am I crazy? Like, is that a problem? Is that not a problem? So there were years of that. But once
that's such an important pause moment of reminding everyone to listen to your still small voice and that gut instinct, right?
Yes.
Because when we try to override it and we start having those questions of, am I crazy? Did I do something wrong? What's going on here? That's almost like a huge red flag of like, whoa. Let's actually zoom out and take a look at what's really going on.
Yes. I love that you pointed that out. I was not listening to myself. I was just like, well, he says it's okay. It must be okay. And I didn't want to believe it was not okay either, Right, I didn't really want to deal with what I thought that might mean. And didn't seem like I had to
continue living the wonderful family life that you were living. And that was a huge threat to that, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. That was a huge threat to it. And it was going to crack everything open, which I think is one of the things that I've heard say the hardest part about infidelity is that then I started to just question what was real. So it made everything before this point. I'm like, well, what was actually going on? And then it just completely changes. It's like, well, if that person was looking at me and saying that that wasn't happening when it was, it really just rocks your world in like what is actually real. And
what's up, what's down, what's
yeah. Yeah, it's just a moment of, and in a way, because of that rocking of the world, you do get to just like fully decide, like, where am I going from here? If you can step back, it's a really hard place to start to do that, but you start to realize like there's all options to believe at this point or to be at this point. So it's open. But yeah, so Nate was definitely on board at that point of like, let's get help. And he was caught in a big way in many areas. And we were in a really interesting transition where we had just moved and he had this 3-week period where he didn't have to report to work. So it was just this synchronistic, like if there's ever a time that he actually could go and have it not, fully disrupt his life and his work, it was then. And we had very supportive family who's like, let's go, let's make it happen. We'll do whatever it takes to get him there. And that was huge for us. We had the support of family, and my husband's like, I just told your family what I did to you. And they're like, we'll send you to rehab. Ooh, I'm going to get choked up. But, they were like, this is the father of your kids and we want him healthy, whether you all stay together or not. Like, we want him healthy. We want what's best for him and the family. And that level of support, my husband had never seen or received, even probably from his own family. So combined with like his willingness and then that level of like buy-in, that everyone was like on his side even after that. And then we had some time separate. I think it just was a very interesting setup that allowed us to actually do some deep healing.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love that community, that support was present day one. Do you feel like you also received community and support through your recovery? Because I know sometimes when addiction comes out into the open, it's a very obvious thing that to some extent people understand and can support people through. And then betrayal is like so internal and so not talked about that a lot of times people just go, oh, well, she's a very put together person. He's going to get into recovery. He's a great guy. I think he's going to do, like, he's taking action on it. They'll be fine. And maybe they don't recognize, if they've never been through it, the pain that you're going through and what you're experiencing. Did you feel like you had support at that time, or did you feel very isolated?
I had support, and I do think that's in a way because of the uniqueness of the situation. I see most people do not have support when it comes, it seems, and from friends and things, when it comes to betrayal alone. And so it was like, you add this label of like alcoholic, and then now it's like, oh, we need to help that.
There's an understanding there.
There's an understanding there. And so I don't want to disregard that everyone who helped me wouldn't have helped me if it had been no rehab. I don't know that. And I had family member fly in because we had just moved. We were in a brand new place, didn't even have our goods, military life, didn't even have our, household goods, and he's gone and I have 2 kids. So there were actual support needed in this place. So I got a ton of support, and I actually did have a lot of resources for addiction programs, and I got right into Al-Anon and just plugged myself in really quickly. I think just because of the background of knowing what happens to the body when you get stressed. I was just like, I'm not willing to go back there. It really was driven by this like physical body thing. I'm like,
I had so much of that too.
Right?
I was like, I know too much.
Yes.
I was like, I know what this is doing to me, which almost like stressed me out more. I was like, no.
Yeah, I was like, I will not let that take down my health. There's no way I'm going to deal with that
survive this
emotionally and then have it affect my physical body. Right? Like,
right. Yeah, 100%.
So I was the gateway for like the parasympathetic and just right.
Yeah.
So I went into this with like, we are all in recovery and we are figuring that, I did everything. So I did have support, but I do think that's rare, Kylene. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it too. So, and I do think it's different because the actual infidelity part, people did not know what to say or do. And I feel like, I feel like what happened was, and I don't know if this is based on my personality and like the tendency for me to be the middleman and in general and, my life and family, but I felt like friends and people were wanting to be supportive. And so they would be like, man, he's such a jerk. And, not in those nice of words, but you get the idea. And that didn't feel good or helpful to me at all. I know some people are like, they want that, like, because then they can be like, yeah, we're all on board. Like, yeah, you didn't deserve that. But what would happen for me because of my personality is that then I would feel the need to actually defend him. Because it was like, well, you don't totally understand what's going on. And it's not all just him. And right. Like there. And then I was like, ew, this feels horrible. Because now I'm like defending something I don't want to be defending in this moment. So all I wanted, just so anybody could hear from, this is just me, but I bet there's others. All I wanted was like, hey, that must be really rough for you. What do you need?
Yeah. Hey, how are you?
Yes. How can I support you? How are you feeling? The jumping on like how horrible he is or how whatever, or what I should do or what I shouldn't do. And then people have their opinions on whether you work it out or you don't. And it's like, that is not helpful. Thank you for not being helpful.
I totally get that. I 100%, because you were talking about you're caught in between a rock and a hard place, right? You're of course want to defend him because he's recovering, right? He's doing the right thing, and he went, and did what he needed to do, and he's showing up, right? And also like, oh no, I'm still mad at him. Hello, like I'm still hurting, like this is not. Yes, I'm moving towards recovery and reconciliation. That doesn't mean I'm in a good place all the time while I'm doing it. There are so many emotions, which actually sort of leads us into the reason that we booked this podcast episode, because I had a session with you earlier this week, and I showed up and I was like, Megan, I'm a happy person and I feel happy, positive emotions, and I am not happy. And this is like a funk that I've been going through for weeks. And you so kindly said, oh my goodness, me too. Those are the words that came out of my mouth last night to my husband. And I was like, no way. And so let's talk about that. You are in a place now. How many years in reconciliation and recovery are you?
Gosh, it's like 6 years.
Yeah.
I have to look at the calendar.
So, I mean, generally speaking, you guys are in a great place, right? Like you've started this new, Zesty Ginger has grown, it's transformed. Your husband's doing really well. Your kids are awesome, right? And you and I just both went through this funk of like, my life sucks.
I know. It was when you said the words to me, I was like, oh, I can't drop this, because those were my exact words, right? Like, this is too similar.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that the ups and downs of everyone, right? Whether you're a coach or a practitioner or a leader, there's this tendency to think other people have it together, right? Or like other people don't feel the things you feel, or like, well, they're not bothered by that comment, only I am, or
I'll hit a certain place in recovery and I'll never be sad again, right?
Yes.
Or I'll never be triggered again. Yeah.
Right. Right. Like we should be over that. It's however many years ago. And then there's layers of things that come up. And then you're realizing, oh, I wasn't ready to uncover that then. And like, now I am. And so you'll get to a new layer and you'll be like, gosh, didn't know that was there. And it's really easy to make that mean something about you. Like, oh, I wasn't really through it, or, oh, I'm not good at this transformation thing, or I'm not really healed. And I think that's why Dr. Alex and I have made it a thing at Zesty to be like, let's be as open and honest and vulnerable as we can. And I know at the same time, we want to be sharing things once we're through them a little bit, because we don't just want to dump the mess and not have any solutions. And at the same time, just sharing so that people realize like, okay, other people have been going through this. I had like 5 different people reach out during that same week being like, what is going on? Like, I hate everything. And I was like, yeah.
Me too.
When I have like one of my best friend here wants to hang out on a Saturday with our kids, and I always leave better with her. Like, I always leave in a great mood with her. She's so fun to hang out with. And I was dreading it. Just like, I don't want to do anything. I was like, okay, this is the time to rest. And this is that play between figuring out when to rest and when to push through because you're resisting. And I was like, that for me is my sign to actually rest. This is my sign of like, body's ready for a break, time to get back in like a little recovery mode. And I could push myself next week.
I love that you brought up the idea of resisting. Let's talk about that, because I think that's an important idea. And that kind of goes into when you are somebody that's looking for transformation and growth in your life, you are absolutely going to come up against resistance. Oh my gosh, this whole week, that was me. I had a big thing that I was doing last night, and I was really nervous about it. And all of my parts and all of my little inner children that were popping up and being like, no, don't do this. You can't do it. And then like adult me, like, I have to do this. Like, this is a good thing. Right. And just so much conflict there. And so talk about, how you said it was, you needed to rest versus feeling the resistance. So when it's resistance, sometimes we need to push through. Like last night was something I needed to push through and move forward. And it was a very beneficial experience in the long term, because I was showing myself that I can do something hard. But that's not always the case. So how did you determine the difference?
Yeah, I think the growth is on the other side of the uncomfortable. So there is going to be being uncomfortable is going to be a part of the process. It's just figuring out like when you are forcing yourself through something based on somebody else says it's time to force yourself through something. Or, what I did was we did a training. We had a 7-day training. And so I was coming back from that and I was like, well, I'll take Monday off, Tuesday maybe, but then I should be good to go. Right. I'd had like 4 days. And so I had put this arbitrary end date of like when I was going to be good to go. And so that's me just saying, okay, this is kind of what society would say, even though I made it up. Right. So I think we have to watch for those where we're just creating these arbitrary rules of I should be good after 3 months, or I should blah, blah, blah. And
I
just
should forgive my husband after,
yes.
discovery, like a few weeks
yes.
in, or yeah.
Yes. So if it doesn't feel good, so this is where we get to use our emotional compass. If doing this thing is like, you're having a strong emotional reaction to it, and you're like, every cell of your body is like, no, I don't want to do this. We need to really look at that. Now, resistance, that has a different flavor. So this is really getting to know your physical signs in your body. And this is something that people who are not tapped into their body, they've been very dissociated, meaning they're just kind of stepping outside. They're like avoiding the feeling of the body, or avoiding then they might have a hard time noticing, like, where is this? When do I feel this? But you can start to feel and listen and notice. And what was the difference between the time where I rested? And so for me, I took the rest of the whole week off. Lovely business partner who was like, I'm actually assigning you to take the whole week off, except for those 3 things that you absolutely have to do. And she said, not only that, but I want you to go buy special jammies and snacks and just like have a TV marathon, because I don't watch TV, right? Like, I have little kids and a business to run. So it was like a real, decadent thing to just do that. And I actually took time off. It wasn't like time off, air quotes, where then I'm also like, oh, but I'll just write that email real quick. Or, and when I came back on Monday, the Monday morning when I woke up with the craziest ideas, Kylene, like this program, this little habit mini course we're going to do just like flowed right into my brain. And I was like, oh, okay. See, I'm seeing the evidence right now that rest didn't actually put me backwards. It provided me the space for this amazingness to come through. If I had just forced work for the sake of like, I work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, these are hours, this is what humans do, you lose that.
Yeah.
So there is no quick and easy way for each person to know, but it's starting to feel into that. Like, when am I forcing and doing it just because that's what other people want me to do? And then when am I like, this is really something I want? Like, maybe you'll know, like, that having an uncomfortable conversation and putting down a boundary in your life is really towards your highest goal and your value. Like, that would meet your value for safety or connection. And at the same time, you're like resisting it because it's going to have some feelings, like, it won't feel good in the moment. Then that's when we say, yes, but this still meets my highest needs and values. I'm going to do it anyway. And every time I do it, I'll feel uncomfortable, but I'll get through it. And then my brain will say, oh, we didn't die. And then you can do it again. So that's where we're pushing through. If the physical body is screaming, we need to really just take a minute and say, is this the moment to push through? Right? Like, teetering on that line, that's the paradox. Like, that's where we have to figure out, like, do I push or do I pull back? And I really like rotate between both, because if you go too hard in one direction for too long, I did a meditation retreat, and at the end of it, I just felt so amazing and zenned out. And I was like, well, why would I do anything? I mean, everything in life I do is just to get to this feeling of wholeness and oneness. So why would I not just meditate? Like, this is silly. And I took that out for a little bit, and then I was like, yeah, I guess I still have to live life and pay bills. And
yeah, right. Yeah. Reality hits a little hard on those days. Right. So you're talking about the oneness and the wholeness, and it's such an interesting thing, because it's like, once you've felt that alignment and that lightness, it's like, oh, you never want to let that go, right? And then life's, and you are just brought right down into reality. And I don't know about you, but it's almost like it hurts more once you've experienced that, and you're like, oh man,
the contrast.
It's just like, I was doing so great. Why'd this pain have to come back in, And it's so interesting, because it's almost like it could maybe even be the exact same thing that 2 years ago may not have hurt as much. It's like, it's like gluten. It's like, you take gluten out of your diet. You're like, gluten doesn't bother me. You introduce it 3 months later and your stomach revolts, right? It's like you gave it the space to feel that goodness, that lowered inflammation, that health, right? And then you introduce it in, and it has the capacity to tell you that it no longer likes this. I like just made that connection.
That's so good.
That's
it's like
so
the windshield, right? When you have like a super dirty windshield and you're driving down the highway, and like, let's say your windshield wipers are broken and it's just dirty, but you just look through it, and your eyes recalibrate, and you kind of don't notice it after a while. But then when you clean it off, and like, you've got a very clear windshield and you're driving down the highway, like one bug sticking to the front, and you're like, oh shoot, there's a bug, right?
Oh my gosh.
It's so clear.
Let's keep this metaphor going. So I tend to be a disorganized person, and it kind of is so weird how this happens. Maybe this is like part of my healing journey. I felt like it was reflective of my mind, where as I continued to heal, I had hit this part of my recovery journey this year where all of a sudden I was like, I want to be organized. And I was like, maybe that's a reflection of, essentially my life getting back in order and hitting a certain place in recovery, right? And so I started doing these little things where I cleaned out the pantry, I reorganized it, I cleaned out my closet, I reorganized that, right? And then we hired some cleaners to come in and do the whole house, and I really organized. I mean, I cleaned the house before these people came. It was like, by the time they were done, this was like the cleanest it had been, right? And I wanted so badly to like keep this up. And actually, I will take full credit. I have done a great job. Hasn't been perfect, but I've done a great job. But it's like that first day, right? Like what you're just talking about, when everything is spotless and you're like, you better not put that dish on the counter.
Yes.
Especially if it's not you, right? If it's somebody else in the house, you're like, how dare you? The work I put into this.
It is so true.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
How dare you mess up the cleanliness I just
Right.
created.
Yeah.
That's good.
But something else that I was thinking about after our conversation was just how being validated or having your experience validated is by itself completely helpful. So we had that conversation about I'm just not happy and life stinks right now. And you, someone that I learn from and really admire and value in my life, came and said, "Yeah, I'm dealing with the same thing too, and I have all the tools in the world, right? I run this business, and we teach you the tools, and I'm having a bad week, right? I'm having an off week." When I tell you that almost immediately lifted the cloud for me,
Mm.
Megan, I was basically fine the rest of the week. It's like, that's all I needed.
I'm not alone.
I
Okay.
just needed to hear that I wasn't alone, that I'm normal, that other people are feeling this way too. And I felt better. It was such a big deal. And I think sometimes, yeah, there are all these tools that we can use. There is all this cool, amazing, awesome subconscious stuff that we can do. And sometimes you literally just need someone to hold your hand and say, you're not alone.
Well, I just figured it out. It's season 14 on our podcast. It's the
perfect.
solo series that I did. And I'm bringing that back because that was why I did that series. Literally the first episode is called I Have Herpes. So when you talk about open and vulnerable, this series was really rough on sharing and it was so healing to share. And I have had so many people, it was last summer that I put it out, that they were like, I just don't feel alone anymore. Like just hearing all it was is me sharing my personal story of a lot of different struggles in a lot of different areas. I got the full infidelity story there and so much more. They're just, all it was is just hearing like another person that they thought maybe had it more together than them really doesn't. And they're like, okay, we are all in this together.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's so much power. And that's why we create the communities that we create. And that's why you create the communities you create, because there's just something, and we have to be careful because we don't want to be like combine the community. And now we're all like, oh, we all suck together, right? We're not trying to bring it down. Although there is power in knowing other people have this stuff.
It's the and, right? It's the idea that yes, today totally stinks. I was triggered, or it's a sad day, or it's a sad week, or you may not even know, right? Like you and I were like, what the heck is happening? I don't even know. There's no reason for this. And we both knew that we would get through it. It wasn't going to be forever. Right. And with betrayal, I think that's really important, that as you are going through recovery, and if you're in a relationship where you are pursuing reconciliation, this is not a linear road. It is such a bumpy road. There's so much up and down, and the reality of the emotions behind what you go through. You are progressively moving forward, and when you feel sad, it doesn't mean you're going back to square one. But you can also, the and is really important, because you can be content and happy and proud of the work that you've put in and the life you've created after betrayal. And you can still grieve the things that you've lost or the pain that you've experienced because of that.
Yeah. And you're dealing with another human, right? And you're dealing with another human's path. And what that just brought up for me is I remember I went to this 2 weeks of neurofeedback. I also shared that on the podcast, but I went and did all this personal work and forgiveness work and had such a deep healing and understanding. And I left just feeling so good. And I came home to my husband and was just like, oh my gosh, like I forgive you. And I just remember the look on his face not being all that great. And I was like, what's happening right now? And he was like, well, I don't forgive myself. So I was like, huh, well, that's an interesting turn of events.
You're like, keep it to yourself. I was flying on a cloud.
Here I am thinking,
I'd like
right?
to stay there, please.
Yeah, I'm thinking like, this is just my thing to deal with. And that wasn't true. There's two of us and there was a lot to it. And he felt horrible about it. And, there was his own healing path too. So it just reminded me of Like, okay, so it doesn't matter. I can still feel good about where I was and what I had discovered. And it's when you're ups and downs with someone else, right. Their path isn't linear either.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up, because the dichotomy sometimes between the spouses after betrayal is so stark that you're like, what is happening? Like, a lot of times when a guy gets into recovery, he's shooting up, right? He's like, he's progressing. He's feeling amazing. He's going up with his emotions. He's like, I don't mean shooting up like drugs. I'm saying like emotionally, he's happy, right? He feels strong. He's like, I am living the life that I want. I am more aligned. This is amazing, right? And he's experiencing this at the same time that you are currently living the reality that he's just gotten out of, right? You're processing the information.
You're just starting it.
Yeah. And so a lot of times those lines go completely opposite for quite a while. And then as you recover and reconcile and all of these things, you don't always end up in the emotional place, like the same emotional place at the same time. And it can be really frustrating, because Patrick and I have talked about that. We'll go in these phases where it's like, man, we're just like ping ponging the emotions back and forth, right? Like one of us is totally stable and fine and happy, and the other one's kind of processing some sadness or grief or shame or whatever. And then we'll just switch. The other one's fine. Right. And so it's like, well, let me support you. Okay. Let me support you. And you go through these phases where it just seems like you're not really hitting the same forward motion all the time, or you're not in the same good mood all the time. And that's just part of it, you know?
Well, in a way, it is actually like we're there for the other person and we're holding the container, because when you say that even happens with me and Dr. Alex as business partners, because we're in the world of transformation and we're doing these 7-day trainings where we might come up against our own stuff. Like it's an up level for us every time we host them. And so we'll notice, like we'll go down on day 2 and she'll go down on day 3. Like, it'll be separate. One of us will be like, in our stuff, and the other one's good. And it's like subconsciously we're aware of like, okay, I gotta be here. I'm the partner that's good right now. And then the other one feels totally safe to actually go into it. So I don't know, just thinking out loud. It's great to have a world where you both have support, so you can just, be in it together, and even better, both be in a great place together. But I do feel like there's like that safety and container that we're like, okay, now it's my turn.
Yeah. Yeah. And just a reminder too, that, you are working towards this hope of a future, this positive life, this unified partnership and happiness and in your relationship. And sometimes you're going to be sad. And that's, it's okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You have talked about community several times, and I love all of the communities that you create, and I love being in your community. And so you have a really exciting, awesome opportunity for everyone coming up in August.
We do.
Yeah. You want to talk about that a little bit?
For sure. So, I mean, Alex and I met on Instagram. So we're like online friends who then became business partners. And now it's been like 8 years. So,
oh my gosh.
Isn't that crazy?
What's so crazy to me though, is that I followed you when you guys were separate. That just blows my mind.
That is crazy. That is crazy.
That's how long I have been fanning you.
Maybe you brought us together, Kylene.
Oh, no, I don't think so. Energetically, I was like, they need to meet. No.
Yeah. So we're all about, it's harder, in my opinion, to find people who are really like-minded and people who are like really willing to go into this transformation work, because it doesn't always feel amazing. And so it's a certain type. So what we've found and what we've created is like, we have online programs, but we really want a place for all those people to come together in person to just actually have the healing time together. Because when we're out of our regular environment, right? So like we're doing a 2-day event in August 23rd and 24th in Dallas. We have this amazing space with a stage and such a cool hotel, and people will come and be out of their regular environment, right? If there's kids, or leaving them at home, if there's partners, and just having a complete break, which allows us to rewire our neural pathways really fast. And we see crazy cool stuff happen. Obviously 7 days that you came to, but 2 days, even 2 days, because you're out of your environment. We're feeling, and we create a space where it's really safe, because people do upfront share. And at our last time we did this habit event, it was in Virginia Beach that time, where I live. And people were out of the gate, Kylene, like sharing the most vulnerable share, like raising their hand. They're like, I'm here for this. And I was like, oh, this is going to go deep fast, because you could tell the energy of the room. And I know it's because a lot of them already have followed our podcast and they're in this work. It was not brand new to them. And when one person opened up like that, it just right down the line, dominoes. Everyone was like, oh, all right, well, you're sharing that about you. Well, here I go. Let's see. It's like not a competition, right? But it became like, and the support in that room, the friendships that were made in that room, we have people who are just now have their best friends that live all over the US, and we get together for events like this. Like some of my closest friends, I just see like 2 or 3 times a year at these events, and we support each other in between on the phone. And they're so aligned with me that it doesn't matter to me that they're not there all the time, right? Like I may see the random neighbor often, and it's like these connections are so deep when you're in a place where you're opening up and you're vulnerable and you're really going for transformation. There's a major bond. And then what we want is people to have that bond where when they are down, they're willing to reach out to someone, because that's a pattern we see, right? Like, I don't want to reach out when I'm down.
Stop calling me out, Megan. I told you that this week too. I was like, man,
I do it too. It's all good.
Sometimes I struggle with that, and it's got to become top of mind because it's not a current pattern. Sometimes it's not that I don't even know that I'm resisting it necessarily. It's sometimes you don't know that you're doing it. I'll be moping to Patrick because, he's here, and he's like, you need to like reach out to so-and-so, he'll kind of
remind you.
Which is great.
Yeah. Right. And so having those people that are on the list that are like, you're so comfortable with that you can call them crying, or you can call them, and it's not, you don't feel judged because they know you, and then you can be there for them. And that's that bond that we see people have at this habit event of just like they're bonded together. So we see people jump into habits at like, what is our step 6 out of 7? It's like just doing kind of like the physical, like I'll move my dry skin brush in front of the door so I don't forget to do it. And we're really wanting to get into like the why we want the habit, who's telling you to do the habit, what the emotional body, the mental body, the energetic body, how is that all on board for the habit, not just the physical. And so that's where once those are all on board, the person becomes the identity of the person who has those habits. And then the habits they just happen. It's like gluten for me, like gluten-free. It's not a thing I think about. It's just how I operate. It's not a thing at all. It's not a problem. When early on it was like, oh, I can't have that. Right. And
right.
So it's how do you get from that state to the identity state? And when you're all on board, you want all bodies on board going the same way, all thoughts on board going the same way, all emotions on board going the same way, you go there really fast. Where if you have a belief that's paddling backwards and a belief paddling forwards, you stay, you don't go anywhere. Yeah. So we would love to have anyone in your community come hang out with us for 2 days.
Well, and you briefly touched on this earlier about how support and community is beneficial, and we want to make sure that it's not only surrounding ourselves with victim mentality, kind of one person supporting that and another person, and not promoting healing, right? And so when I think about the betrayal community, these are the kind of people you want to spend time with. This type of community where people show up and say, I want to work on my stuff. I want to move forward. I want to progress. I want to see what emotions are getting in my way, what thought patterns are getting in my way, what beliefs I have that are getting in my way, or that even, and this probably isn't going to happen in the 2-day, maybe in one of the longer events, but what beliefs came out of the betrayal that we need to start processing, and things like that. And so these are the people that show up to these events are amazing. Like I love literally all of them. And I love that I will say I jumped in on event number 1. So you did. I've been to a lot of them at this point. And it's so cool because the community keeps growing, and, I go to level 2 and I meet new people. And then I was an assistant coach at a different level 1, and I met, more people, and it just keeps growing, and they're all awesome. And they all show up because they want to do this. They want to lead lives that are very aligned, as you were saying, with the values and belief systems, and that's how you know that you want to move forward. It's moving towards that value. It's moving towards that goal that you have set that is like that highest intention for who you are. And this is how you do it. So if you guys want to come spend time with us for
Yes.
2 days in August.
We actually don't allow people to drop into the victim mentality. We have everybody at the beginning. We explain what's happening in the brain when we do, and we have them raise their hand. Are you willing to, be at cause for this whole event? Meaning like, yes, things have happened and will happen. And then we get to choose what we do with them and make them mean. It doesn't mean they didn't happen. Doesn't mean they weren't horrible. It's just how much do we play into them and how much energy are we giving them? So we're having everyone raise their hand. So far, everybody has done it.
I love it. Yeah. I love the container that you create whenever you kind of put these nice little boundaries to keep everybody safe and on the same page in these group settings. And so I absolutely love how you guys have done that. Well, anyone that wants to check this out, there's a link in the show notes. So definitely click that and take a look at the 2-day event in August in Dallas. It's essentially more or less it's getting to Dallas. That is the cost of this. They're offering it at a really ridiculously low price, or you're not making money on this.
No, we're not. That's to make it accessible. I mean, essentially, it won't even cover the space. And the first 50 people are going to get a meal voucher. It's $197 till early bird. So yeah, this is just to bring people together, the power of community. We've seen what happens because people show up and they're there and they're like, oh, they're meeting other people that, oh, you have that I need and I have that you need. They'll end up coaching each other. They'll end up with business relationships. They'll end up with friendships. So you just can't put any value on that.
No, I love it. I absolutely agree. Well, you know how much I love you, Megan. And
love you too, Kylene.
I'm so thankful that you were on the podcast today and sharing your personal experience. Definitely go check her out at the Zesty Podcast. And where can people find you and connect with you? And actually, that's not the name of your podcast anymore, is it?
Well, technically, maybe by the time this airs, it's we're transitioning to becoming Zesty. It used to be, but you can find it if you search Zesty Ginger.
Yeah.
Okay. If you come on over to Instagram, we are at Zesty_Ginger, and then everything is linked there. So
okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Go follow them. They're amazing. Everything you guys put out is helpful and encouraging and moves you more towards that goal of living the life that you want to live. So thank you for everything that you do. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
On the next episode.
And we are going to end today's episode with a couple words from one of our fabulous attendees at the last 2-day Habit event. So check out what she has to say.
Hi, my name is Abby. I am here to give a testimonial of working with Megan and Alex and about the 2-day retreat. I went to the one in Virginia Beach and it was just the most amazing thing. It was like the first thing that I've done for myself, all by myself, being a mom and trying to figure it all out. Is really hard. I found them online and I've been working with them. I went through their healthy hormones program. I've gone through the HTA program, and being able to meet them in person and give them a hug and thank them and to be a part of this next phase of mindset is just, it's been an amazing trip. I highly recommend it if you have been on the fence. If you have any inkling or want to do it, I highly suggest you go and just see where all the cards fall, because being in a room full of like-minded people, feeling like you're finally like home in a group of just amazing women, you should do it. You really should.
Thanks for coming out to hang with us on the podcast. It is our goal to transform the way women are treated in healthcare. And we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. We have a lofty goal of 1 million downloads. And we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more women, get more amazing speakers for you, and bring the most cutting edge information.
If you found these podclasses helpful, please take a moment to text 5 women you know the link to the series. We appreciate your help so much. Can't wait to see you next time.